Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Emily Litzel. I'm an astrologer. I do some financial astrology, I do some mundane astrology, I do natal astrology and predictive astrology, but for all the astrology I do, I use Hellenistic traditional techniques with the inclusion of some outer planet activity because they're frankly relevant. And I'm always picking up new techniques, which I love to share here. But one of the basic practices of astrology for just about anybody, and certainly for me, is tracking the lunations. And we have a full moon in Virgo coming up, and it is such a launch pad for everything that's going to come through the end of March, definitely for all of April, and in a lot of ways for this whole next year, okay? The Virgo full moon means that the moon is opposing the sun in Pisces, the last sign of the zodiac. So that is the last full moon of the astrological year. The new moon in Aries starts the astrological new year. That's spring. That's time to start over and renew. This is going to be a very potent it's going to be the end of a series of manifestations. And when all of this starts to move into Aries, it's going to be a lot more like implementation of whatever you've set up for yourself. I use the word manifestation kind of loosely. That is very relevant Pisces energy, but this is just more about something that you've been planning, that you have been idealizing, that you have been seeing, you've been given a vision of the future of, right? Jupiter is a very optimistic planet, and Neptune is the planet of like psychic downloads, so there could be like a lot of inspiration in this one area that Pisces rules for you. But the other problem with those two is that Jupiter rules, big exaggerations, and Neptune rules deception at the same time. There is a chance that you have been deceiving yourself in this area, or you're so caught up now with the sun also in the house of Pisces, your vitality is maybe getting siphoned away to these illusions that are coming up in the Pisces sector. But really, like, there is no good astrology, there is no bad astrology, there's only astrology at a certain point and how you react to it. And even the most benefic setups can come with really serious downside if you're not being conscientious of how you use them. So you could be befuddled, you could be completely out to sea with all this Pisces energy. And then in contrast to that, we have the Aquarius deck, which is Venus stuck in between Saturn and Mars, both malefics. So that is both malefics co-present. The Saturn-Mars conjunction, when it comes up in the first week of April, is probably going to bring some global strife. I would really expect to see more developments between Ukraine and Russia. That's one of the ones that globally and personally, like, you're going to feel it. It's going to be coming up in some area. And so we'll get to talking about where that's happening for each sign after we do this. But just going further into this, Virgo full moon is a really good chance to see what the reality of the situation is, okay? Virgo is practical reality, and Pisces is dream manifestation from the collective unconscious, birthing it into some kind of existence. And with Virgo, the practical servant, hosting the moon in this opposition, it's shining a light into this house that might have like stolen all of your energy and attention for the last like month or so, and reminding you that the house opposite to it, the sister sign, is the one that is going to help you balance whatever energies are pulling you out to sea. So if you're Virgo rising, right, and this moon is happening in your first house, there's a very good chance that in your seventh house, your house of partnerships, or even maybe like, battling with an open enemy that's in the seventh house too, that could be pulling your attention away from the self-development that you were supposed to be doing. This is the concept that I want you to be thinking of when we start going through some of the other themes that this moon is going to come up with, because it's using the tool of the opposing house, of the house that Virgo rules, to get clearer, more concrete movement on whatever those Piscean dreams are. And it's absolutely essential that you do this step, because this is the part where you get to use the discernment and the the detailed nature of Virgo to pick and choose what stays and what goes. Virgo is going to help you remember the steps that it takes to make that actually happen. Every time you go through a full moon, you have that counterpart, right, of the opposition of the sun and the moon. The moon is reflecting the sun's light back to it, which means that it's shining a light into whatever the matters of the sun and the house that it's holding may not have been able to see for itself, right? It's putting a mirror up to the sun and being like, deal with it. Sometimes what happens with Pisces is they just get to manifesting without thoroughly diagnosing the problem and what they actually needed to pull in. And when they get what they were asking for, because they usually will, they realize it wasn't what they needed. It's not going to put them in the direction of ideal health or better standing in the community if it's work related. It's just something that was born of trying to avoid the original problem. It's a distraction that's manifested itself. To have a functional plan that can actually carry forward into the new years, starting with the Aries new moon right around the corner. This is what Virgo is going to do for you. That's what this full moon is meant for. It is meant for diagnosing where the dream killers are. So on top of all of this Piscean fun that we have going on, we have Mars squaring Uranus and reactivating the point where Saturn has been squaring Uranus. So that happened back in December, a little bit in November, and in the summer of last year. There's a theme that's been coming up. There's some plays where you start getting a bunch of forward motion, a bunch of independence, a bunch of freedom, like wind under your wings, and something smacks you down. Saturn is kind of the brick wall that keeps, meeting your intentions and saying, no, not yet. Mars is an antagonist. Mars is coming into this equation to force you into moving without necessarily having all the moving parts, right? So you still got Saturn kind of like putting a lock on the resources that you might need to accomplish something, but you have the situation that's going to come up with Mars and Uranus that says, no, you have to go now. Sorry, like there's no more room for you to, you just have to figure it out. Anything that you're putting off for like a future version of yourself, like when you are in like ideal health, ideal shape. I keep saying shape, I don't know why, but when your finances are perfect, when you've recovered from losses that you've taken in the market, when you finally have your new job, when your resume is all set, you're going to feel like you don't have enough time, money, or attention. Something valuable and necessary is going to be missing from the alignment because we have Venus getting beaten up and not being able to provide her charms to the party. But even like without that, you're going to have to jump and go. For Aries, this full moon is happening in your 12th house of service and solitude and suffering and self-sabotage. So you may have like a really strong desire. Like this is where you're probably hiding out lately. Like this is a lot. Having a Pisces 12th house is no small feat, right? That is the 12th sign of the zodiac in the 12th house. That's a lot of abyss that you can risk falling into. So in that, while you're lost in the 12th house abyss, this moon is asking you to remember that your 6th house daily habits and activities and how you treat yourself on a day-to-day basis is what's going to be able to save you and to actually steer all that 12th house energy, which is very potent, into a healthy direction, right? You have to come out of the solitude and really put yourself through the day-to-day materia of the same things. Make your bed every morning, take a shower if you're feeling like super malaised, and get yourself set up for the day in whatever habits you need to have. And then maybe go into that contemplation. But this is really going to be forcing you to look at whether those habits are supporting you. Like the 12th house, 6th house battle is really one of procrastination. Like this is the hardest part of it. You may have actually a bunch of dreams and goals that have been popping up in your head that you're not able to take steps on because you can't get out of that head, right? Kind of a Virgoan problem, but in this case, it's the 12th house of just like it becomes easier and more tempting to fantasize about it. And then you start to get this anxiety of whether or not it's ever going to happen because you're not taking the steps to make it happen. But in this case, again, it's 6th house stuff that is going to give you the clarity to be able to take these Pisces manifestations in your 12th house that is going to move into your 1st house with the new moon in Aries that's coming in. This is a fertile ground right now. Your imagination and all of that stuff, these are real live things that can come to pass and can be a part of your existence. but not without embodying that 6th house first. Taking care of yourself like the valuable person and resource that you are. That is what is going to give you the structure to see your 12th house fantasies become real. This Taurus risings, this is me. This is all of us right now. This full moon is happening in your 5th house of creation and passion and true love, hobbies, speculation, trading. So this is where the attention needs to be, right? On what makes you passionate, like what your hobbies are, what you do just because it brings you pleasure, whether or not somebody gets it. And in order to like kind of avoid the work that has to like go on in this house right now, you may be losing yourself in the 11th house of groups and long-term goals and hopes and wishes, meaning that you put the energy of the collective above what is cool to you. There is so many ways that we like start to compromise the things that we like really like and love for collective approval, right? Because there is a majority, there is like the trend, there's something else that people are into, and it can be really hard to show yourself and say like, no, this is the stuff that I like. But this 5th house full moon is demanding it, right? You need to make sure before you go forward. This is an 11th house manifestation coming of something that is a dearly held goal or a wish that you've had. You have to be able to pull back into the things that ultimately make you happy, that fill your heart with some kind of like that first love sensation, the creativity that you like to see, whether or not anybody likes to see it. I'm sure everybody's had like some kind of a super corny hobby where they wish they could talk to a million people about it, but nobody else gets it, right? And you have to kind of go forward on that path regardless. That is a 5th house versus 11th house struggle. The other problem for Taurus risings and for all the fixed risings in particular, so I'll kind of go back to this, but definitely something that everybody should be paying attention to, is that we are getting squared to the 7th circle of hell by Mars and Saturn, right? Uranus in our 1st house, North Node in our 1st house, and then the South Node in our 7th house. So that's 1st, 7th, and 10th in this unholy alliance of T-square that has been really, really, really agitating us like all year long. Like ever since those nodes shifted into place, we kind of became like the main characters, if you will. Like this is something where this is kind of an identity crisis with Uranus and North Node in the 1st house. You might not be so certain of what you were at the end of last year. You might be completely rethinking all of that 11th house, like goals, long-term wishes. Is this really what I want? Am I going to be able to keep up with it if it comes? Like there's a very good chance that that 5th house is not feeling as rewarding because it's very hard to get out from the pressures of this T-square. And it makes everything feel like there is a super urgent, need to respond, need to acclimate, need to get in the right place. But like, frankly, that's not how these squares work. Like you have to kind of let yourself be like the diamond that's made under pressure. You do the best that you can with each decision. But this full moon is going to ask you to come back to like what matters to you. Go back into that source of creativity, like support yourself and your creative processes, create. Find a way to distill your process so that it is the most effective one for you, so that it has some legs and stamina, because it's another really big theme of the year that's coming up. If you're doing something because everybody else likes to do it, it's really hard to keep yourself motivated enough to get through like the icky times of it, or where it's super, super stressful and toxic. You need to have your own motivation, and that needs to be because it makes you super happy. Okay, Gemini, this is my sun sign, the best sign. So this is happening in your 4th house of home and roots and establishment and where you come from, the foundation that you build for yourself, which means that it's very possible that you have been losing yourself in your career and you are now facing some kind of not a reckoning on the home front, just that your home isn't as stable or reflective as what you need it to be, because it's just kind of like a shell that's containing all of your brilliant plans, right? As you're going out in the world and you're making your reputation and you're like, it's all coming together for you. And that is all very real. That's not going anywhere. Jupiter, Neptune is going to finish that. But you have to have a stable home life, or it's never ever going to be something sustainable. You have to be in a safe place home-wise. This is saying that if you have your home in order, there's no place you can't go. Like there's nothing that can keep you from flying to where you're supposed to fly to. in the ninth house of faraway people and perspective and propaganda, with Mars and Saturn coming in, you could be having some problems with how outside perspectives are starting to influence your inner life and your emotions. You could be having within your social circles, within your immediate, even if you're somebody who wants to stay out of politics really badly, it's crossing over into your sector. It's like eroding, your peace of mind. You have little things that you want to like answer to and be like, somebody's being wrong on the internet, but you don't want to let yourself go there because it doesn't feel significant enough. This is the ninth house, 12th house battle, right? Of where like when our perspective shifts, when we get a broader view of what's going on in this world, education, higher education changes us, right? We come home from college having learned all this in a different place, and people deal with us in a different way, because it's why conservative parents are scared to send their kids to liberal schools, right? Because they're all going to come back liberal. This is the same crisis going on with this Mars-Uranus square. This is something that is forcing you to acknowledge that you have been changed by this perspective shift. Inside, you are changed, and at some point that is going to have to come out into the material, practical world. And that probably is going to have something to do with your fourth house of home, taking you away from what is a very beautiful and exciting career. And this is only temporary, right? Once this is done, you have a full platform to launch from when that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction comes around to bless your 10th house. So I know you got this, Gem. Make it happen. Beautiful moon baby Cancer, how much we love you. Okay, so this full moon is happening in your third house of communication and community, and the networks that you have around you in your immediate environment, transportation, technology. It's possible that you are trying to avoid the things in your lived experience that you can see and touch by hiding out in the ninth house activities of faraway people, foreign concerns, education, spirituality. That's another, it's really easy to hide in that. Constant studying, learning too much. You've had Jupiter, the expander, in this sign since, the beginning of the year in your ninth house. Jupiter is like the natural ruler of the ninth house in a lot of ways. This is a space where he is the planet of theology, of law and order, right? Of philosophers, of priests, of religion, of all this like higher minded optimism that keeps us faithful in dark times. Like that comes from Jupiter. And that's also something like belief and perspective is ruled by the ninth house as well. You are absolutely growing in how you see the world around you and your place in it. But it's easy to get lost in that. This could also be something where you are getting tempted to take on another course of study, prolonging a course of study when you should be getting prepared to move into your 10th house of career, just not feeling prepared for that yet. Refining your personal communications, making sure that you are being as honest and authentic as possible, in these murky communication waters. Cleaning things up with siblings, if there is anything else going on, is just good spiritual practice at this point. Just because that's what this moon is asking you to do. And then looking at how you're using technology and communication and all of these things to further your own goals and to put out there. This is something where I could totally see like a writing project that you've been putting off because you get caught up reading everybody else's writing too much, or you're constantly studying for something that you wanted to put out and not letting yourself get there. The third house moon is going to bring you back into those concrete steps that it takes for you to communicate what's important to you and not just be the ninth house recipient of all the outside information, right? Of other people's opinions. And it's going to go great. But when the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction comes up, this is going to be such a blessing and such a huge like boost in how you view the world around you. You're going to have a perspective shift if you do this right, that's going to carry you to new places in your life because you believe in the world in a different way. It's going to unveil itself in a different way to you. And you have really exciting stuff coming up with that. You also have Mars and Saturn in your 8th house. So that is, you have Mars and Saturn in your 8th house of death, debt, inheritance, other people's money. And you have that squaring Uranus in your 11th house of groups. and friends and long-term goals. So it does look like there could be the money missing right now that it would take to accomplish some of the things that you'd want to set out for yourself. There could be something that, and it could go in the other way as well, except that this is kind of like malefic activity. But there's something that is coming that is like a sudden shock, or has been a constant source of block and not kind of oppression that's been oppressing your goals. It's coming always from 8th house stuff that shouldn't be talked about. It's either psychological, debt related. It could be hopefully not a death of a friend or family member. Grieving could totally be in this category. Mars is going to bring something to a head in this area where the Saturn-Uranus square has been happening that makes you need to move quickly on it and move past it very quickly. So, and you're going to do fine. You're going to do great. And then you have this beautiful Jupiter-Neptune conjunction to look forward to. So nail this full moon. I know you have it. Leo, mighty Leo, another one of the fixed ascendants. You have been getting squared by everything. You've had the South Node in your 4th house. You have the Saturn-Mars co-presence squaring your 1st house from the 7th house. And you have the North Node and Uranus in your 10th house of profile, publicity, reputation, career, how the outside world views you, status. So this is something where you are no longer wanting to accept limitations of how you are, how you're perceived, how you're dealt with. This might be compelling you to take unnecessary risks in your career, maybe not, but that Saturn square from your 7th house of relationships means that it's very possible that every time you think that you're about to fly in something that matters to you, something happens with the relationship that brings you back down to earth. And because Saturn is here ruling your 6th house as well, it also kind of looks like your immediate environment has been part of what's coming up with the blocks. You get so carried away in the busy work of the day that you don't get to go and develop yourself the way that you want to, right? To be actually keeping that presence up, doing the things that it takes to be visible, to be noticed, something that's important to both Leos and the 10th house. So this is a really big deal with this kind of crisis that this Mars-Uranus square is going to manufacture. It's not going to be anything new. This is really going over the ground that the Saturn-Uranus squares have already been hitting for you. But because Mars is going, and Mars is a planet of severance, Mars is a planet of direct action, Mars is a planet of speed, right? And doesn't ask questions, stabs first and questions later, if at all. So this is going to be something that's coming along and forcing a solution really quickly, whether you're ready or not. And that is eventually going to lead to the freedom that you need to have with this Uranus and North Node activity to become the person that you want to be in the public world. In the meantime, with the full moon in your 2nd house of earned income, reflecting in the sun in the 8th house and all this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, there might be a problem with having a little too much access to other people's money right now. The 2nd house is where what you value, what you earn, and what you bring in is where you are going to find your salvation. Part of this crisis that's being manufactured in your 10th house can be healed by looking at like what it takes to make you feel compensated, properly motivated for the work that you do. And those jobs, and making sure that you're in alignment with them and making sure that you are pursuing them, sometimes aren't easy to come by when more comfortable 8th house situations are in play. Sometimes, like wealthy parents, you'll hear this a lot of times, even though it sounds like horrible, but they will be planning not to leave their kids anything in their estate because they want to make sure that they can take care of themselves. That is a very 8th house, 2nd house situation, right? Like if you had to go take care of yourself tomorrow, would you be able to do that in a way that doesn't make you feel degraded, that doesn't make you feel less than, that lets you be like the shining lion, head of the pride in your 10th house? You need to be looking into your own values, and what you bring to yourself and what you bring into your outside situation. That 2nd house is going to set you up for a really beautiful blessing coming in that 8th house. So you're not meant to be without outside resources or the help or anything else that's coming on. This could be clearing a lot of debt, finally being able to have the resources to be able to get yourself into a new situation. It just means that it's unlikely that you're going to be able to hold on to anything 8th house related, other people's money, without having a strong 2nd house for yourself. You still have to know what you are worth, where your value is, and that seeing that value reflected to you by the outside world, you know, in forms of salary or appreciation or like retweets if you're a content creator, any of that kind of stuff. You need to have yours as well as theirs. Okay, Leo? So for the most part, I know you're tired with all these squares. I'm tired too. But you have like really good stuff coming. And that means like that 8th house big conjunction means that you do have the help and the assistance of somebody around you. But there's also a lot of room for deception or delusion or just like misunderstanding, right? With this Mercury Neptune stiff going on, you just might not really understand like what you think is available to you from outside sources, or you may not understand the severity of a debt that you've taken on or how quickly it could spiral, because there's a lot of Neptune contacts coming up in the near future too. So feed your 2nd house with this Virgo full moon and get ready to see your 8th house flourish as well. Virgo, my darlings, you are the main character right now, and Pisces season may not have been as easy on you. This is having to do a lot with an area that you can sometimes struggle with. This is other people, they're your committed partners, right? Anybody you would sign a contract with, or a sworn open enemy who hates you and will put it in the papers if they have to. Whatever this is going on, but it looks much more service oriented. You are hiding from your 1st house activities by putting yourself in service to the people that you care about and the people that care about you. And you've done this before. You do this all the time. Like, you know what comes with this. You have got to feed yourself. This is about your self-development right now. Like, you have to be, when Virgo's happy, when you shine, when you smile, the world around you smiles too. You are the practical healer. You have got to be coming from a healed place, because you can project that into people around you just by living it and experiencing it. But you are so hyper capable, you're so efficient that even if you're not trying to put all of these like burdens of the people that you are most closely associated with, they might have like already pegged you into that position, because you can do what they have to do for themselves faster, better, like more quickly, with better results, you know, and it's a little too easy for you to start taking that over for them. There's a better way for you to channel that. But at this moment, this is really just about making sure that you are, that you're okay, that you're good, that you are reflecting everything that you want to, that your body is in the shape that you want it to be, that your spirit is as supple as you want it to be. So we have Saturn and Mars co-present in your 6th house of daily responsibilities, which is Virgo is the 6th sign. These two are associated with each other kind of controversially. This is the hardest place for you to hold malefics. Those day-to-day activities and the rituals that you establish for yourself to get everything in the flow or the order that it needs to be, those are also like anti-anxiety pills for you. You get very nervous when there's too much being shaken up in your immediate environment, and it really starts to affect your mental. So now you have Mars, like the planet of like assertion and drive, which is, it can be a good thing. That can definitely help you make like massive changes, but co-present with Saturn, and Saturn rules your 5th house of fun and activity too. So it really does look like there's just a lot of like drudgery stuff that is coming up and being exacerbated by this 9th house activity. The 9th house square is you wanting to get out of the mundane. Your Uranus in the 9th house means that you want to be a little bit more metaphysical. You want to maybe be going back to school. You want to be free from some of these like day-to-day drudgery tasks. Like, you want to have that higher minded perspective, maybe even an adventure in a foreign place where you want a chance to develop at a higher level than what a day-to-day grind is going to get you, right? Like, you don't just want to maintain and keep going forever. Like, this is making you think of like who you could be, like what you could be believing in, where your perspective could be. And then you keep hitting all of these blocks from Saturn saying like, no, we are coming back to like, this is your grind. But this is about you. And you can start to unlock all of these abundance and all these gifts by keeping it into 1st house activities, right? This is about your identity and being centered in who you are and being well nourished and moisturized. For these people that share the most important parts of your lives with you, you need to be in your best possible shape. And that is what this full moon is asking you to attend to. Libra. Libra, this full moon is happening in your 12th house. Okay, so this is happening in your 12th house of unconscious, which means that you need to be spending some more time in solitude. You need to be spending more time not thinking necessarily, like in meditation and contemplation. You have to make sure that you're not scared of your own mind and your own company, because this is saying that with the 6th house pile up of Jupiter and Mercury and Neptune and the Sun, all of them in Pisces, hanging out in your house of daily habit, work, and service, you could be burying yourself in so much busy work that you are not taking the time to appreciate like what your inner life looks like, what things look like behind the scenes when nobody's watching. And I know Libra doesn't like to be unwatched for very long. But when you are completely alone, if you don't have all these little tasks to attend to, how are you feeling with yourself? Like, how are your actions lining up with your inner intention? Like 6th house, 12th house stuff is a lot about action and intention, right? One is completely internal. One's a process that is almost like it's a subconscious thing. Sometimes it's not even in our hands. It's just some like deeply held like inner trauma that we've had for a really long time, forcing our 6th house behavior, forcing us to do something that we think that we're superstitious about. Like, if I don't tap my nose 3 times before I lock the door, we're going to get robbed. That is the kind of like 12th house, 6th house axis sometimes, I think. Like, what are you stuck in that you're doing on a day-to-day basis that is ruining, that's stealing from your like inner peace? As cheesy as that sounds. Do the spiritual stuff. Like, do the stuff that, like, this should be a ritual of one, really. Like, something that you set up that is really just a moment that you can have with you and the cosmos. Like, going to stare at the moon by yourself and, like, have some kind of meditation around that could be really, really profound. This is yoga. This is, like, meditation and contemplation and all of those good things, which are going to get you ready for this massive like miracle heading your way with the Jupiter Neptune conjunction in your 6th house of daily work and daily habits, which I think is one of the coolest places to have it, because that is where the level up begins. When your day-to-day life changes and what you're responsible for, that is where the rest of it starts to follow suit, right? You can have the best 10th house reputation in the world, but if you know that behind the scenes you're working like a dog to cover like every single base by yourself and make sure that everything is taken care of, it really doesn't feel like you put that much together. Like, this is a situation where you could be like maybe taking on an assistant, somebody underneath you, an employee, or streamlining like who you work for to be able to just have to really feel it, like really feel the space and what you are responsible for on a day-to-day basis, and feel that like abundance and change happening from like the ground floor. You have Uranus and the North Node in your 8th house of other people's resources. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have made a face about that. That is squaring Saturn and Mars in your 5th house of creativity. So your financial obligations that you've set up for yourself to the people around you, or the money that other people should be bringing to you, are coming into conflict with the things that you like to do. They might be causing conflict with like a true love relationship where you are having a difference of resources with somebody that you really want to be with, or you feel all that chemistry for, but it doesn't quite look like it could turn into a 7th house long-term committed thing, because there's too much disparity in what you guys have to offer the relationship through psychological resources, financial resources, assets, property, any of that stuff. This could also be really like sudden inheritances coming in, or taxes, status changing, very quick upheavals, you know, with the North Node there, like we know with this co-presence, this is all very fated. This is all very necessary to move you forward, but it looks like it's taking a big toll, however that happens, with your ability to play, to be creative. This might be affecting your relationship with your children. This could be affecting your decision to have children. So there is a tension that's been happening there, and Saturn's been squaring it for a long time. You've been through this already, having to kind of like face down where your responsibilities are pulling you away from the things that make you passionate. But Mars coming to hit this square means that we're going to have a conflict again, but this one is going to be sudden, swift, and it's going to be severing, right? Like there's going to be a detachment, like a limb is no longer going to be attached, and you are going to be able to move forward with this. But for the meantime, for right now, Enjoy this 12th house moon. Take that time to yourself. Face down the stuff that is scaring you, that's getting ready to sabotage you. Like if you need to make, like this 6th house change is one that you're like really looking forward to. Like you definitely want to have this change, but you are also going to have to deal with, you know, what that costs you. Like we've been saying with the Saturn, Venus, Mars things, that means that everything that we gain from Jupiter, Neptune comes with the cost. And the 12th house is where you're going to work out whether or not you're okay with that. This is your chance to figure out like what the prices are, what you're willing to pay, how far you're willing to go. And all of that is an internal process. So you're going to do amazing. I know you got this, Libra. Yeah, I think that's it. Okay, Scorpio, my darling. Scorpio rising, Scorpio sun, Scorpio moons. You have the South Node in your first house, and that is a really very tricky place to be hosting the South Node, because there is a lot of things that could feel like a real loss of identity, a loss of yourself, where you could be having to give up areas that you that mean a lot to you but are not functional in your relationships, in your 7th house of partnerships. You have Uranus and the North Node in your 7th house of partnerships. Now I have Uranus natally in the 7th house. What I can tell you is that this means that you might have sudden unexpected changes coming to you by way of very Uranian people that just kind of pop into your life, like eccentric geniuses. They could be super talented or famous, somebody that has some measure of like talent or like or just weirdness that kind of sets them from like the outside, right? Like there's something that sets them apart different. And because of this, other people, and the ones that are especially willing to commit to you, are where a lot of your karma is right now. That's the direction that you're being pulled into. But in doing that, you're going to be having a lot of conflict with what that costs yourself. Like you are having to you have to compromise on things that might have mattered quite a lot to you. You may not have as much time to take care of yourself as you had before. But with this moon in your 11th house of groups as well, this is also kind of saying like the 5th house activity is, again, like that's like our guilty pleasures, right? Like that's the stuff that you like to do. You have all this Pisces energy here. Like you have been kind of falling into that 5th house, and the things that make you, the things that keep you like comfortable and happy and feeling all of these, like you may be faking euphoria with drugs and alcohol, right? Like that sounds like really, that actually like sounds like the Euphoria TV show, but like you could be trying to create altered states to make you feel that thrill of first love, to make you feel all of these things. And what the moon in the 11th house is asking you to pay attention to is to actually establish the goals and the long-term vision, and like think about the communities and the groups and the friends and the social circles that are actually going to help you get back to a place of that 5th house chemistry, that chemical reaction, that dopamine, right? That is something that you have to kind of like fill out the fine print of, like, what is the long-term goal? Like that is the most important word that I see coming up here. Where is all this 5th house energy leading to? Like what is the end objective? Like are you actually creating something that is going to have distance, it's going to have a life? The 5th house is of children, you know, like once you conceive a child and you haven't, it's ruled by that, it goes into the 6th house of changing diapers. Like there's a full cycle for that your creations live through, and it's a matter of how far you're willing to see this stuff that makes you like, that gives you those dopamine boosts. Like are you, if this is trading, if this is speculating, are you gambling, you know, like, or are you really like wanting to trade because that is something that you've figured out that you have a talent for, but you have like years more of education that you have to go through to really become the trader that you could be. Of Mars and Saturn and Venus in your 4th house, squaring all the 7th house activity. So you've probably had restrictions coming from the home front. You've had blocks and obstacles that are kind of centered around like your foundation and where you come from, your family, your roots, ancestry. All of that kind of stuff could be putting a real damper on what is going on in your 7th house relationship. So this could be something where you are also like home, living at home with your partner and family, and that doesn't like go very well. You could be considering having to move back home for family because something else is happening there. Family could be like looking to move in with you. So that's just like, that is something where that issue is going to be forced. You already know what it is. It's been happening since the summer. It probably came back around November, December, when Saturn Uranus square happened again. And now Mars is going to be crossing all of this ground to reactivate it, but this time with action, and this time with real, like, sudden, swift, like, okay, that's that. But this 11th house full moon and your, like, hopes, goals, and wishes, like, don't sleep on that. That is really, like, you outside of all of these squares. You're another fixed ascendant. You're getting your ass kicked right now with Taurus, with Leo, with Aquarius, right? Like, the four of us are in it together at this point. Do not forget what is ahead of you. Don't abandon your wishes. Don't abandon the things that matter the most to you 5 years out from now, because the tension of all of these squares is causing you to become a bit of a nihilist and think like, well, what's the point? Like, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to get there. You know, the exhaustion. This has been a really exhausting season for us, and it's just getting started. We have like over a year left of all kinds of good stuff coming on. So please do not like abandon yourself and your goals and the things that you want in that process. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's happening for good reason. You're going to be in a much better place than you started this with, but you got to back yourself. You know, you got to back the things that you like in the here and now that just like give you like that little thrill in your 5th house. And you got to back the things that the legacy things, like who you want yourself to be in the long term, and who you want to be associated with, and the networks that you want to be valuable to, and all that kind of stuff. So you got this, Scorpio. You are sovereign. Okay, Sag, this full moon is happening in your 10th house of career, honor, status, reputation. Can be the husband at times if this isn't your own career, of what's happening. And your chart ruler, Jupiter, is opposing that from your 4th house. So it is very possible that there are moves that had to be made or are coming up on the way for your own profile, for your own reputation, your own career, that are going to that you're stressed out about taking action on, and you're hiding in the responsibilities of home or the comfort of home, like the security of having, like, you know, your nest and the people that believe in you no matter what. Sagittarians have a soft spot for yes people. Like, it's unfortunate, but you guys do. You have such strongly held beliefs that it is so painful to have them questioned. You have a home life that is super supportive and is kind of built around you and very indulgent on the things that you get like on your soapbox about. It might be hard to pull yourself out from that and put yourself into a public discourse where you can be seen and you have to deal with opinions that differ from your own, especially in the kind of situation that we're in, just in the world in general. But that's necessary because you need to be seen. You need to be seen for who you are and the gifts that you have. They're very necessary to the world around you. And you're going to have to voluntarily pull yourself away for this moon to look at what the demands of that house are, okay? To handle all of this like nebulous kind of confusing energy in your 4th house where you have some major miracles on the way. That is what you have to pull back into. The 10th house of outer like reputation and your higher goals and how the outside world views you. Not just who you can get away with being on the inside of your home, like in private life, like what that looks like in the public. It's kind of a question of strength testing it. You know, this is the ability and the right and the blessing, right? The gift of being able to be the same person inside that you are outside. And you do not want to ignore that for any reason. You have Mars and Saturn in your 3rd house of communication. So your squares have been happening between your 3rd and your 6th house. The communication may be something, so the 6th house of work and daily grind means that you could be having issues where you're not allowed to speak the way that you want to speak in your immediate work environments, like what you do for paycheck to paycheck, you know, your daily habits and how you take care of yourself may be at odds with the community that you're in at the moment. Like you don't have the immediate resources or the neighbor system that you would like to have to be able to function in that 6th house smoothly. So that is another one where a sudden shock is coming, right? Like the sudden shock from the 3rd house, possibly a communication that affects how your day-to-day living goes and how you have to handle that. But this one is coming with closure. It is going to put a pin in it and you are going to be able to move forward. So pay close attention to that 10th house And, you know, keep your nose clean. Remember that there is, at any time, you could become a public figure, brilliant Sagittarius. So make sure that your resume is clean and you are forthright and you are ready to be seen by the public around you, because you deserve that. Capricorn, my hardworking darlings, like, how does it feel to have some of the cosmic attention off you? As a fixed sign, you're welcome. I've taken the heat for you. You have a lot going on, and you have this full moon that is happening in your 9th house of perspective, philosophy, esoteric belief, spirituality, religion, higher education, and it is opposing all this Piscean energy in your 3rd house of siblings, transportation, community, communications, technology, all of that. So what is going on right now is you have major blessings that are coming up in this 3rd house of community and communication. This could be a really powerful time to be like thinking about a blog, a YouTube channel, if there is something that you've been wanting to communicate for the sake of your brand or anything else, or just for like personal, like you have the mojo to launch that right now, and that would be a very good idea. This full moon is asking you to broaden your perspective, maybe study some more, like if that's needed, if you need a course of study, to avail yourself of that, to make sure that you have like a broad view of whatever you are about to focus in on in the 3rd house of like immediate environments, right? Take a second to step outside of that and get more clarity. This is a lot of Pisces energy, right? You have a Pisces 3rd house. This isn't necessarily something that's new to you. That's why sometimes communications with you can be a little, not necessarily your strong point, right? Where you go in and out. You're more of a doer than a speaker or communicator. But this is saying that you are about to have a major, a life-changing moment, but there's also a lot of fuzziness because this is Pisces, because Neptune is here. You may have deception in your immediate environment, or it could just be a sense of like unease or distrust of what's going on. And the solution to that lies in your 9th house. Once you have a chance to kind of like hit the books, seek an expert, right? Find wise counsel outside of yourself and your lived experiences. Deal with it from there. Take the blessings from there. Like there is like a perspective shift that you're missing that is easily gained under this full moon. In the meantime, you have Uranus in your 5th house being squared by Mars and Saturn from your 2nd house. So Mars and Saturn and Venus in your 2nd house means that you could really seriously be having some earned income issues at the moment. And if they haven't come up yet and you haven't had some kind of a sudden crisis in that regard, then you probably want to be saving and preparing for it, because this is both malefics in this house. This is not like, it's probably coming. Like it's just something that is going to have to be there. And it looks like the lack of income or the lack of money that there has been a lack of income that's been influencing, you know, whether you can play, the time that you have to spend with your kids, like if you can even have hobbies, if you can be creating things. And you have like Uranus and the North Node here. It's never been more important for you. Like this is like not like somebody putting the pressure on you, like when are you going to settle down and have kids? Internally, it's important for you now to have freedom in this area. You are wanting to rebel and break out of these constructs that have you always working, always accomplishing, always being the Saturnine, you know, achiever that everybody expects you to be. But there's a conflict that's been coming. There's a block that's been coming with income, with your values, with how you're valued, that's been getting in the way of that every time you think that you're getting motion. And now Mars is coming to heat up that same point. And like we have been saying with every other thing, it is going to be a swift and sudden resolution, right? Like it might be bloody. It may be severance from a job that just isn't cutting it, you know, for the sake of finding higher employment. I would not at all be surprised to see that. Or having to cut expenses, you know, to have more downtime to be able to do the things that matter to you, that you're passionate about. But whatever you are trying to do, it is important that you have a cleansed and consecrated perspective, right? So you are going to go to the 9th house. You are going to go to the Holy Man. You are going to have that vision quest before you come back and address all these things. And that is what the Virgo full moon has in store for you. I love you, Cap. You guys are amazing. Aquarius, Jesus Christ, okay? Like, you have Mars and Saturn hanging out in your first house with Venus stuck in between them. So you're not even getting any of the goods of like Venus in the first house, which you deserve. You've been through a lot with Saturn in your first house of self. And the good news is that as you're being beat up by the malefics, and this is very important, almost for more than any other rising sign, you guys, this is in your sign of, this is in your health, your body, your vitality, your sense of self. Please do be very careful about accidents or just taking unnecessary risks with yourself. Like, you really should be a little bit more protective as Mars is passing through for the month of April and moving into Aries. But you know, this is being squared by your fourth house. So your fourth house is where you have been wanting more freedom. You have been wanting the ability to rebel, to maybe go to a completely new place, or there's some kind of a sudden move that's forcing you out of the place that you're in. And this is being squared by the first house, your fixed sign, right? A fixed first house. It looks like you don't want to make the changes that are being asked of you, that have to be made to your foundation, that have to be repaired. And some of this force that Mars is going to have to apply is going to be necessary because the North Node is there as well. This is fated stuff. This isn't something that you can ignore. So that's going to be kind of like lighting a match, right? And getting ready to set you off into that. And you've already been having to deal with quite a lot of that. This has come up in November, December with those squares. It came up in the summer. It came up in February. Like, this is not a new situation. It's just Mars coming to bring like a swift, kind of scary resolution to the whole thing as he's crossing over these points. But what you do have available to you is all this beautiful, like, Neptunian, Jupiter, Mercurial, Sun energy in your second house. Like, you have a full parade moving through your second house right now. So earned income, values, how you're valued, self-esteem, stuff like this has been getting a really big boost from Jupiter since he's been here. And Neptune could have you feeling more idealistic and hopeful about what's going on in that. There is the possibility of some deception here, thinking that money is going to be coming in, that it's not. What this moon is asking you to pay attention to is the Virgo part of your chart, the 8th house. It's not just your earned income. It is the income of the people around you that you're associated with. Are you supporting too much? Are you holding too much debt? Does the income that you earn, does it just fly right out of your hands? You know, this could also be having to take your attention to your taxes. There could be an inheritance on the way. The 8th house also rules death and psychology. I really do hope that it's not going to be a death for you, but that could be something that you have to pay attention to before going back to your own earning capabilities and doing all that second house activity. But for a lot of you, I think this is just do your taxes and do them carefully. And so that you can have it like, you know, this could be a tax return coming in for you at the same time. And there is definitely, if there is anything lingering, if you are in partnerships, if you have been, if there is imbalance or inequity, like, it is pretty important to pay attention now to how you feel about that and how that's wearing on you, and correct it if you can, you know, in any way that's, if it's coming from you, then figure out how you're going to fix it, because that second moon is loaded for you and there's absolutely nothing standing in your way of earning like a crazy person. As long as you can handle this Mars Saturn activity in the first house. Like, that is ugly and it's hard, and you are going to have to work very, 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 very hard at whatever you're doing, and it's going to feel like there's not a huge break ahead for you, but the rewards are going to be enormous. You know, they really are promised for you with everything that's happening in your second house. So this is there's no way to lose. Just handle your business and keep that 8th house cleaned up, and you are going to make it through these squares, Aquarius, with the rest of your fixed brethren, I promise. Okay, Pisces, last sign of the zodiac. Save the best for last, right? You know all this is happening in your first house. You have had almost like a dissolution of false personalities and false identities that are preventing you from being your true Jupiterian self, right? Neptune has been here kind of dissolving the lines of that which is not you. And you are trying to figure out, like, in these sort of like, you know, murky waters, like, where you come out of all of it. But with Mercury and the Sun hitting your first house as well, the entire spotlight is really on your first house of self and identity, and you have some of the most benefic stars in the zodiac coming up with this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction that we have in the first week of April. So this is a period where, even though the moon has like ingressed in here into the 8th house, because we keep forwarding, it's in your 7th house of partnerships. You have had all this focus on yourself, and it is right and it is okay to be like self-obsessed to a certain point, because that's where the planetary activity is, and you're being called to address a lot of that and figure out who you are and what you're doing. But your relationships need to be respected too, and they need what they need from you. And it is very possible that all of the self-obsession, the necessary self-obsession for growth, has been pulling you out of alignment with your partnerships. It is time to check back in with them and make sure that they're getting what they need from you, especially if you're getting what you need from them, which is usually like Pisces manage to keep themselves, like when they are in relationship, you guys are usually very well loved, and sometimes not as like totally caring group, like Jupiterians all over the way, but you're not always capable of seeing or recognizing what the people around you need, or what it is that you're better at the Jupiter stuff, right? To inspire, to like, let's think good things, like let's do something positive and get ourselves out of it. And this is saying that the people around you have like emotional, real, concrete needs too, like real, practical things that need to be attended to with a lucid mind, and a sober sense of self, like not something that they need to be distracted from or entertained away from. They don't need to have it be coped through. They need your presence right now. They need your focus and attention. And you need to make sure that they have that, or you might be like losing some relationships in the sense of all this growth. And if that's what it is for you, then that's cool too. Like if that's a decision where you need to be able to focus on yourself right now, and you have a relationship that isn't necessarily like you're not going to be available for it, then it is time to let it go. Because it's not right to be having people waiting on you to come back for something if you know that you've already grown out of that situation. It really would be the time to let them know that you're getting ready to move on in that. But you have Mars and Saturn and Venus in your 12th house right now, which is really kind of a lot. So you could be having a lot of inner turmoil, would be the first word for it. Like Saturn as like a restricting planet in your 12th house of seclusion and solitude and like disintegration, right? It's like this disassociation, just kind of like wanting to like be mixed with the rest of the ether. Saturn in the 12th house can have you escaping too much to a place that it's going to be detrimental to your real first house life, okay? And this square to Uranus in your 3rd house of communication, like there's probably something that you've been trying to launch for a while that is either, it could be musical, it could be a blog, a vlog, any kind of like setting up a website, anything that is communication oriented to the outside world, and you've been getting these inner blocks. You've been getting this block from your subconscious that stops you every time you're getting ready to launch, okay? This is something that you would have seen around November, December. This is something you would have seen around the summer. This is something that would have come up in February. Now Mars is heating up that point again. So those like self-sabotage mechanisms that are pulling you out of being able to like get that communication or that community project underway are about to get stabbed dead, right? With Mars and his like stabby ways. It is going to come to a swift and possibly upsetting resolution, right? Like Mars and Uranus together are going to make big moves that you are going to have to adjust to. But it does look like you have all of the energy to do it, and you have the North Node there as well. So you have like some of this stuff is being called from you, right? It's destined. There is a point and a reason to all of it, but you really do have to clear all that 12th house stuff so that you're able to support yourself in the things you want to say and the things that you want to do. Put your face to it, right? Come out of the shadows and into that first house energy. Like that's what this is for you. You have this big battle between like wanting to be seen and all this boisterous energy in your first house, and then the 12th house of all your self-doubts and all the ways that you negate yourself, all the ways that you tear yourself down. And it's affecting everything that should be happening in your 3rd house, but you have big things to tell this world Pisces, and it's going to come out of you whether you like it or not. So let's make sure that you are cleansed, that you are consecrated, that you are ready to embrace this mission and share your voice with the world, because it's needed. And you're going to have to do it regardless. You're going to be forced into it one way or another. So let's make sure you're ready for it. Let's make sure you're looking forward to it. I know you have it. Make sure your partners are taken care of, and then there's nowhere you can't go. So that's what I have for you today. I am so excited. I have been wanting to do these full moon forecasts for all the signs for the longest time. So excited to be able to put these out to you. Let me know what you think about them in the comments, or what's happening with you. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And thank you so much for coming back. Have a really blessed full moon, and get yourself ready for April, because it is coming in hot and you will not be the same by the time we hit May. I can promise you that. All right. See you later.